What if I told you that the most important stories of Middle-earth were never told? Not the sagas of great battles, but the quiet whisper of daily life. A sip of water in a scorched wasteland, the memory of a riverbank in a clouded mind, or the silent dance of the stars over Rivendell. Write in the comments where you're from and what time it is for you now. And now, get comfortable and just imagine you are there.
My precious.
Have you ever thought about what it truly means to be thirsty? Not just a little parched, but so bone dry that every drop of water feels like the most valuable thing on earth? Imagine, if you can, a place where the air hangs thick and hot, almost like molten glass, where the horizon stretches out forever, playing cruel tricks with shimmering mirages that just vanish, stealing away your last sliver of hope. Even the shortest walk, there becomes an absolute battle for survival. Each step demanding an unbelievable effort, every breath burning your lungs. Today, we're going to dive deep into that brutal, unforgiving desert. We're going to experience what it's like to desperately search for pure water when all your strength is gone, when the very air you breathe tastes of desperation, dust, and utter hopelessness. Here we are, my friend Frodo and I, stepping across this bone-dry, cracked earth. It truly looks like it hasn't seen a single drop of rain in thousands of years, all carved up with deep, winding cracks, almost like the wrinkles on some ancient, incredibly thirsty face. Every step we take crunches, a dry, grating sound, like walking on thin eggshells, ready to shatter. Little sharp pebbles and sand grains scatter under our boots, each movement kicking up a fine, reddish, scorching dust. And this isn't just dust that settles on your clothes or hair. No, this stuff gets everywhere. It invades your nostrils, stings your eyes, irritates your throat, grinds on your teeth, leaving this constant bitter dryness in your mouth. It's so deep, so persistent, you just know nothing will wash it away except that one thing we're chasing: water. That still, elusive, life-giving water. Frodo, my dear friend and companion, his face is also covered in that same dust. He honestly looks decades older, the fatigue etched deeper into his features, his once bright eyes now a little blurred by dehydration. But even then, he hasn't lost that sharpness, that inner spark. Every now and then, he lifts his head, scanning the horizon, almost as if he needs confirmation that we're still on the right path, that this never-ending nightmare will, somehow, end. In his gaze, I see the very same unyielding, though flickering, determination I feel. That mutual reflection of our shared suffering, our sheer perseverance, it becomes this silent promise between us, the only guiding light in this truly unbearable inferno that just seems to stretch on forever. We, Sam and Frodo, walk side by side, supporting each other, not with words, but just by being there. In this lifeless expanse, we're like one entity, two links in the same chain. If one of us falls, the other can't possibly go on alone. Our fate, you see, is bound together by something far stronger than mere friendship. It's by the very purpose of this journey we share. And then there's the sun. Oh, the sun. Our chief, ruthless, relentless enemy in this fight for survival. It knows absolutely no mercy. It just hangs there, high overhead, a colossal blazing orb, radiating a heat that's just unbearable. Its rays are mercilessly scorching, turning your skin into this dry, peeling, lifeless parchment. It doesn't just warm you, it burns, right down to the bone, causing blisters, sucking every last bit of moisture from your body. Your skin feels taut. Your lips are parched, cracked, bleeding. Every corner of your mouth aches from the strain. The temperature here? It rockets past 50 degrees Celsius. Honestly, if we had a thermometer, it would probably just melt, showing values completely incompatible with staying alive, with even just being. The air itself is hot, utterly still, and heavy. It feels so dense, you could almost reach out and touch it. It's like a sponge, just wicking every bit of moisture right out of your lungs, making every single breath heavy, agonizing, and bringing zero relief. Your throat gets so dry, it feels like you've swallowed a handful of hot sand, and any movement of your throat muscles produces this painful, grating rasp, a sure sign of inevitable dehydration. That taste in your mouth, ash, dust, and something distinctly bitter, almost metallic. That's not just thirst. It's already the acrid, tangible taste of despair, slowly, insidiously, creeping up like a predator, trying to grab hold of your mind and snuff out those last, barely flickering sparks of hope. Frodo, a little behind me, takes another heavy breath, and I hear his raspy breathing. It's a stark reminder that I'm not alone in this torment, that his suffering is as real as mine, and his strength is absolutely at its limit. His hat, it slipped to the back of his head ages ago, revealing a sunburned forehead, and his hair is just plastered to his skin, soaked with sweat and dust. In this hellish heat, our thoughts become sluggish, narrowed down to one single thing: water, thirst, survival. The entire world, for us, has shrunk to this one tormenting desire. It's become our only meaning, our sole goal of existence, keeping us, Sam and Frodo, going on this unbelievably tough path. We're not just walking through this lifeless desert, just moving forward aimlessly. No, what we're doing out here, it's a hunt. We're searching, almost sniffing the air, like those ancient, primal hunters whose very lives hinged on every single catch. Our eyes, now red-rimmed from strain and dust, are just so weary from this constant agonizing effort. They're straining to pick out the slightest, barely visible signs of life, the faintest hint of moisture in this utterly dead, yellow, scorched landscape that genuinely seems to never change. Frodo's eyes, deeply sunken with exhaustion, scan the horizon with such intense focus. He's looking for what I might miss. Our individual searches actually complementing each other, creating a single, almost instinctive detection system. We exchange quick, barely noticeable glances that speak volumes, thousands of words, conveying the sheer depth of our weariness and our silent yet rock-solid determination to keep going. Every single bush, no matter how dry or unremarkable it looks, every boulder that casts even a short, meager shadow, every depression in the ground, it all gets this meticulous, painstaking examination. Could it be that under this thorny bush, right in its deepest shadow, the ground is just a tiny bit less dry, a little more yielding than the scorching rock all around it? Maybe its roots, having plunged deep into the earth, are reaching for a hidden source, one we can't see with our naked eyes, but whose presence is hinted at by that barely perceptible hint of green, that small crumb of hope we desperately crave. Hope, it's not just an emotion here. It's the invisible, yet incredibly powerful engine that keeps us, Sam and Frodo, on our feet when our bodies are literally screaming for help, when our muscles cramp from dehydration, and a relentless hammer pounds in our heads. It pushes us to just go on, past the next seemingly identical hill, because it's no different from the last one, towards that distant rock that just might promise some shade, however insignificant, maybe offering a brief, truly salvific moment of relief from this scorching sun. I see Frodo, despite all his weariness, just trudging behind me, his steps heavy but never wavering, always following mine, almost as if an invisible thread ties us together in this hell. Every so often, he gently pats his old, worn backpack, just checking if its contents are still there, even though we both perfectly well know there's almost nothing valuable left inside. Maybe a couple of crackers, perhaps, and our unwavering faith in salvation, which, oddly enough, becomes our only real fuel. The desert is utterly silent. And I mean, its silence doesn't just deafen you, it actually presses down, seeping into your very soul, amplifying every single internal thought, every desperate plea that just revolves around one word, like a prayer. Water. Only the sound of our own heavy, ragged breathing, the thumping of our hearts that seems to echo in our parched, buzzing heads, and the rare creaking sound of stones underfoot break this all-encompassing, oppressive, almost tangible stillness. Occasionally, there's the buzz of some annoying nocturnal insect flying past, or the dry rustle of a tumbleweed pushed by a light but scorching wind. Yet, even these tiny, almost indistinguishable sounds feel too loud, too intrusive, too disruptive in this dead, all-consuming silence, where every rustle, every little sound, becomes an event, a sign of something inevitable. Every kilometer we cover isn't just distance. It's a genuine test of our strength, our endurance, and the absolute limits of human capability. And our feet, despite wearing comfortable, specialized footwear, are already throbbing with an unbearable fatigue, heavy as lead, just refusing to obey even the simplest commands. Every movement, whether it's taking a step, lifting an arm, or even just turning your head, comes with immense, almost unbearable difficulty, demanding colossal effort, burning through our very last reserves of energy. Our heads swim from the unbearable heat and that creeping, insidious dehydration. Sometimes, our eyes blur, showing us deceptive, cruel mirages, crystal clear blue lakes, and lush green oases filled with life-giving shade and refreshing coolness. These visions vanish as quickly as they appear, dissolving into the hot, shimmering air, leaving behind only an intensified feeling of deep disappointment and an even greater, gnawing longing for moisture. Frodo, noticing me sway from another wave of dizziness, reaches out a hand, offering support, even though he himself can barely stand. Our fingers barely brush. But in that simple gesture, there's more understanding than any words could convey. It's a silent promise not to abandon each other, no matter the cost, until the very, very end. I see his lips move soundlessly, perhaps repeating that sacred word, water, or calling upon some inner strength he's pulling from the deepest parts of his soul, refusing to break. His gaze, full of anguish, but utterly unbroken, gives me the strength to take one more step, and then another, because we, Sam and Frodo, are together. Our method of searching out here isn't just some chaotic wandering, believe me. No, it's a carefully calibrated blend of years of acquired scientific knowledge, pure natural intuition, and bitter, hard-won survival experience, each one truly worth its weight in gold. We're not just looking for water, you see, but for the most subtle, barely perceptible signs that might possibly hint at its presence. It's almost like we're deciphering an ancient natural code left by the earth itself, a code we've learned through nothing but sweat, and pain, through ages of hardship. Look, here's a small, almost invisible depression in the ground, where perhaps, just maybe, rare but life-saving rainwater once flowed. We carefully squat down, running a hand over the bottom, trying to feel the slightest coolness, the faintest, even invisible moisture. Nothing. Only fine, scorching dust that actually burns the pads of our fingers, leaving this gritty sensation in every pore, as if it's trying to burrow into your skin and stay there forever, leaving its permanent mark. And here's a group of stones. They seem a little darker than the others, their surface looking just a bit less faded under this brutal sun. Could moisture linger longer beneath them, protected from evaporation, as if in some natural safe, preserving the most precious treasure, accessible only to the few chosen ones who manage to find the key? We start moving them, one by one, with immense caution, checking every single crevice, every tiny crack in the rock, every little indentation where even a single, minuscule drop could have seeped and lingered. My palms, Sam's palms, slide over these rough, hot as a frying pan stones, my fingers catching on sharp edges, leaving red, painful marks on my skin. But hope, that thin, barely visible, yet incredibly strong thread, it just finds its place in every single, even the most routine, exhausting movement. I see Frodo, his hands just as scratched as mine, methodically checking each stone. His perseverance, honestly, seems almost incredible amidst this agony, as if he literally feeds solely on the idea of salvation, the very thought of water, of life itself. We meticulously, with an almost manic thoroughness, inspect every plant, every blade of grass, every dry tree. You see, some desert flora, like certain cacti or succulents, can clearly tell you water is near. Their roots go unbelievably deep into the ground, just to find and hold on to even minimal moisture, keeping them alive. We also scour for animal tracks. If there's water, there will be animals coming to drink. Birds, lizards, small rodents, maybe even larger hooved animals. Those would leave distinct, fresh prints in the sand, which would be the surest sign, irrefutable proof, leaving absolutely no doubt. But so far, only rare, barely noticeable, almost wind-erased tracks of desert foxes or snakes. They're like us, forced to seek moisture. But unlike us, they know this land so much better, almost as if they are a part of it. Its ancient inhabitants, for whom the heat is home and the desert is their native element, their unchanging world. Frodo and I just keep going, refusing to let despair take over, supporting each other even with our silent presence, our shared will. Time out here doesn't just pass slowly. It stretches, honestly, like thick, viscous tar spreading across this scorched earth. Every single hour feels like an unbearable eternity, and every step, it feels like the last, decisive effort you can possibly make. The sun seems to just freeze at its highest point, stopping the entire world. Then it starts its agonizingly slow descent towards the horizon, painting the sky in these incredible, but completely unrelieving, fiery red, crimson, and orange hues. It doesn't promise coolness, just a shift from unbearable heat to a suffocating sultriness that chokes out your last remnants of strength, your very last breath. The temperature drops only slightly, and even once darkness falls, the air remains warm, muggy, bringing almost no real coolness, and your body is just dehydrated, pushed to its absolute limit. Desert nights, let me tell you, they can be treacherous. The temperature does drop sharply, but it brings no desired relief. because our energy reserves are already utterly depleted. The cold only intensifies the discomfort, seeping right into your bones, causing shivering, robbing you of the last vestiges of sleep. With each passing hour, it's not just physical exhaustion that grows, that already peaked long ago, and now just painfully drags your body down. No, it's also a deep moral, psychological, emotional depletion. The haunting thought that we might not find water, that our strength might just run out before we reach our goal. It starts to press down like this heavy, unmovable slab, threatening to crush the last, barely flickering embers of will and determination, leaving only emptiness, only hopelessness, only despair. Sometimes, I just want to collapse onto the scorching ground and give up, to close my eyes, to let this all-consuming, lifeless silence just swallow me whole. But a voice inside, that primal instinct for self-preservation, that ancient powerful call, and perhaps also Frodo's voice, who, despite his own exhaustion, just keeps walking. His steps, though slowed, still persistent. It forces me to keep moving, no matter what. Step by agonizing step, kilometer by kilometer, meter by meter. This internal struggle, sometimes proves even harder than the fight with the desert itself. Its sheer harshness and indifference. It's in these very moments that the true strength of spirit is truly tested, and every movement becomes an act of incredible faith and sheer survival, a truly great, silent battle. And Frodo, my friend, is living, breathing proof of that strength. And then, when it truly feels like every last physical and mental resource is utterly exhausted, when our vision is just a blur from fatigue and constant strain, and hope has pretty much abandoned us, replaced only by this dull apathy, something incredibly subtle happens. In the far distance, against those monotonous, endless sands and scorched rocks that just stretch out to the horizon, something different appears. Something that really stands out from the overall, unchanging picture. It isn't some bright, deceptive mirage, because it doesn't shimmer, it doesn't vanish. It stays there, a stable, clear spot on the horizon, not falling for the hot air's temptations, not playing cruel tricks on us, not teasing our already fragile minds. It's not just a sudden shift in color that could simply be a play of light and shadow. No, this is something subtly darker, a little more saturated, almost as if someone had gently brushed a damp brush across a faded canvas, adding vibrant hues and some real depth. A faint hint of green. It almost blends with the desert's general faded tone, but still, with the most careful inspection, it's undeniably distinct. My heart, Sam's heart, tired from that monotonous thumping in my temples, it suddenly begins to beat a little faster, filling with this new, almost forgotten, incredibly powerful feeling. Hope, so desperately desired, so long awaited, it just instantly dispels the darkness. I turn to Frodo, and in his eyes, I see the exact same astonishment, that very same spark that just ignited within me. It was like 1,000 words had been spoken in that single moment, requiring no sound, only a profound, deep understanding. His lips, which had been pursed into a thin line, slightly part in a silent sigh of relief. Something truly living has appeared in this dead world. We actually quicken our pace, despite the nagging, piercing pain in every joint, despite the growing dizziness and nausea from severe dehydration. Every meter we cover brings us closer to this small but incredibly vital anomaly in the vast, lifeless desert that just a minute ago seemed completely devoid of life. Our common goal, it felt like, had finally taken on flesh and color, beckoning us, Sam and Frodo, forward through the hot air, towards salvation, towards a new dawn. As we finally approached this tiny, saving speck, which to us felt like a lighthouse shining in a vast sea of sand, we began to make out more and more details. It wasn't an oasis, not at all. It wasn't some wide river with rushing waters, or a huge, deep lake tempting us with its coolness and mirroring the blue sky. No. It was just a humble, small patch of land, tucked away in the deep, protective shade of a small rock formation. This formation shielded it from the most scorching sun rays for most of the day, preserving some precious coolness and moisture. And in the air, besides that usual smell of hot dust and dryness, there was now this faint but distinctly fresh, cool scent. It was almost impossible to discern at first, but it was absolutely there. It actually penetrated our lungs, refreshing them, filling them with oxygen and life-giving moisture, bringing this instant, long-awaited relief. It was the smell of moisture, the smell of earth truly saturated with water, the smell of life itself. It instantly awakened our dormant survival instincts, as if thousands of years of evolution had just converged into this single sensation, this gentle, promising aroma, bringing news of our salvation. We saw several plants that looked not just alive, but genuinely lush and green, especially compared to everything we'd seen during the last endless days spent in this hell. Their leaves were noticeably greener than anything else, their branches not as dry and brittle, but supple, full of sap, almost as if they just experienced a benevolent rain falling directly upon them, granting them a second life and newfound strength. Frodo pointed with his hand to the greenest part. His voice was hoarse, but in it I could hear this barely suppressed excitement, a true premonition of the miracle that was about to happen, because, honestly, this was our absolute last chance. And then, there it was, under a small, slightly protruding rock overhang, where the shade from the scorching sun lingered the longest, we finally noticed it. A barely visible dark spot on the stone. It wasn't just a shadow. It wasn't an optical illusion, not some trick of light and shadow. It was moisture. Undeniable, indisputable moisture, gleaming right there like the most precious jewel, absolutely invaluable and real, just like a dream come true. We immediately knelt down, Frodo and I, completely forgetting the hours of fatigue, the throbbing pain in our muscles, our chafed feet, all our cuts and scrapes. We forgot absolutely everything except this single moment, this truly precious, unimaginable discovery. My fingers, Sam's fingers, finally touched the cold, damp surface of that stone, and that coolness, that moisture. It felt like the most incredible sensation in the entire world. It was as if every single nerve in our bodies had just yearned for exactly this contact, this blessed touch, this miracle. Frodo, his hands trembling, touched the stone right beside me, and an expression of such profound, pure relief washed over his face. You know, it's a look that just can't be described with words. You truly have to feel it with your entire soul. Now listen, it wasn't some roaring stream, not a swift brook carrying powerful waters. It wasn't even a spring gushing from beneath the earth with a powerful, abundant flow that could quench the thirst of an entire tribe. No, it was just a thin, barely noticeable, yet incredibly persistent trickle of water, slowly, agonizingly seeping from a tiny crevice in the rock. Drop by precious drop, one after another, It was collecting into this tiny, shallow puddle, maybe the size of a hand, perhaps a little larger. But it was a miracle, a real, uninvented, primal, truly incredible miracle right in the very midst of this scorched, searing hell. It genuinely felt like a gift from above, a direct message from another world, a world of life, filled with coolness and hope, a world we had yearned for so desperately. In this delicate trickle of water, it seemed, all the wisdom and strength of the desert itself was gathered, showcasing its unbelievable ability to preserve life even in the most unimaginable conditions, truly demonstrating nature's indomitable will to exist and its eternal cycle, always full of secrets. The emotions that absolutely overwhelmed us in that very moment weren't shouts of unrestrained joy, no wild exhilaration, no jumping around or jubilation like you might expect in a different situation. No, this was something far deeper, much more intimate, almost sacred. It was this quiet, profound relief that just spread through our bodies like a warm, gentle wave, washing away all the tension, the pain, the days of suffering, leaving behind only weightlessness and a profound peace. This wasn't merely the quenching of thirst. This was a complete rebirth, a deep satisfaction that permeated every single cell of our bodies, from our fingertips to the very crown of our heads, filling every vein and artery with brand new energy, restoring strength that truly seemed forever lost, bringing every cell, every nerve, quite literally back to life. It was this feeling as if the heaviest, most unbearable burden, one that had weighed on our shoulders for countless hours, maybe even days, had finally lifted, just dissolving into the hot air, leaving behind only lightness and utter serenity. There is water. There is life. There is hope. We carefully took out our well-worn, battered, but unbelievably precious hiking cup, the one we'd saved specifically for this moment. And with immense care, with reverence, with trembling hands, almost as if we were handling the greatest treasure imaginable, we held it under this thin, life-saving trickle. The drops fell slowly, so agonizingly, incredibly slowly, that it felt like an eternity passed until the cup filled even by a single centimeter. But not a single one was lost. Each tiny drop was precious. Each one was worth our lives, worth our future, our shared destiny. Frodo and I, Sam and Frodo, we looked at each other, and in our eyes, there was this unspoken gratitude for having walked this unbelievable path together, for not having abandoned each other. Every single drop wasn't just water. It was a treasure, a truly priceless gift sent from above. Every single drop was concrete confirmation that we had not given up, had not broken, had not lost faith. Every drop was an unconditional victory over the desert's mercilessness, over our own deep fears and doubts, over the very thought of defeat, over all the incredibly hard trials that had befallen us. When that cup finally filled, it seemed like a genuine miracle, an almost impossible event. We drank. We didn't gulp it down, not greedily, even though every single cell of our bodies was screaming for it, screaming for that unrestrained, life-saving drink. Instead, each sip wasn't just about quenching that agonizing, parching thirst. It was a slow, incredibly conscious, deep rebirth. It was step by step, bringing us back to life, filling every fiber with new meaning, a new striving towards light, towards a new day. The water itself was cool, so clean, absolutely crystal clear, without even a hint of sand or that bitter taste that had haunted us all day, every single hour, embedded itself in our tongues and minds, poisoning every moment. It flowed down our throats like the most life-giving balm imaginable, instantly restoring strength, washing away fatigue, returning a glorious clarity to our thoughts, dispersing the thick fog that had enveloped our consciousness, opening horizons that just moments ago seemed forever closed, bringing back both faith and profound hope. This taste, oh, it wasn't just the taste of water. No, it was the taste of pure victory over truly adverse conditions, over our own creeping despair, over the absolute limits of our physical and mental capabilities, over death itself, which had been literally breathing down our necks. It was a victory over all the obstacles that had seemed utterly insurmountable. It was, without a doubt, the best, the most precious drink we had ever tasted. Its flavor would remain in our memory forever, serving as the ultimate standard of purity and true value. No expensive drink in a fancy restaurant, trust me, could ever compare to this. No delicacy could possibly provide such deep, true satisfaction, such overwhelming gratitude to fate for granting us this moment. Frodo drank right beside me, his eyes closed in pure enjoyment, and on his face I saw a clear reflection of my own relief, that quiet, all-encompassing joy that just permeated us to the very depths of our souls, binding us even closer. This shared victory over despair, shared intimately between us, Sam and Frodo, made it even more valuable, almost as if it now belonged not only to us physically, but to our very souls, forever bound by this brutal trial, this precious miracle, this defining moment of triumph, a living symbol of our sheer resilience. So, this small victory, right here in the vast desert lands, it's not just some simple story about finding water. It's not just another tale of survival. No, it's about absolutely incredible human endurance, about an unyielding, quiet will to live that just pushes a person forward even when all hope seems lost and the entire world around them offers nothing but despair. It's about realizing how, even in the harshest, most merciless conditions imaginable, when every single new dawn seems to bring only fresh trials, and every sunset promises nothing but a suffocating, endless night, there is always a chance, always hope. If only you keep fighting, if you absolutely refuse to give up, holding tight to your companion, to the very thread of your destiny, to that unwavering faith in something genuinely better. You just have to keep searching. You have to keep believing in your own strength, in your own capabilities, and simply never, ever surrender. Even when every single step demands enormous, inhuman effort, when those cruel mirages beckon with their deceptive, false promises, draining your very last strength, potentially leading you straight into madness and utter despair, it is precisely then that you must be strong. This whole experience, really, it's a powerful reminder of just how fragile and incredibly valuable our planet is, how critically important it is to preserve every single resource we have, especially something as utterly vital as clean drinking water. So, next time you, maybe, mindlessly turn on the tap and just enjoy a cool, refreshing stream, please take a moment to remember this story. Remember that tiny, barely visible trickle of water that became a priceless gift and a profound symbol of hope in the vast, scorching sands, amidst millions upon millions of tons of dust and silence, a true saving beacon. And perhaps, just perhaps, you'll look at ordinary water in a completely different way, with a brand new feeling of deep appreciation and a clearer understanding of its true, irreplaceable value. Because for someone in a truly desperate situation in the middle of the desert, like Sam and Frodo, it means not just quenching thirst, it means life itself. It means salvation and the precious possibility to move forward towards a new day, to a new victory, to a new challenge, to a new purpose. And remember this, always, even in the most desperate journeys, having a loyal companion who genuinely shares all the hardships with you, making every step more meaningful and every success so much sweeter. Well, that is truly the most valuable treasure and support imaginable, incomparable to absolutely anything else. If you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing to the channel. Give us a like and definitely share your own stories of overcoming incredible difficulties in the comments below. Have you ever truly wondered about the countless mysteries hidden within the night sky? How every tiny flicker on that endless black canvas is actually a colossal sun, whose light we marvel at across an abyss of ages and light years. Today, we journey into the very heart of veiled beauty, to a place where time seems to stand still and the soul finds true peace, to Imladris, or, as it's also known, Rivendell. There, we'll join one of its ancient inhabitants for a voyage along the star roads, right from a balcony. Imagine this. It's late evening, or perhaps deep into the night. The air is cool, but not chilling, merely caressing your skin, carrying the subtle scent of damp earth, mountain flowers, and distant waterfalls, whose quiet, melodic voices drift up from below, merging into a gentle, soothing lullaby of the valley. You stand on an intricately carved, vine-covered balcony that hovers above the rushing streams and shadowy gardens. Everything around is hushed, asleep, but not the sky. On the contrary, it has awakened in all its unimaginable glory. The elf standing beside you, his gaze fixed upwards, seems himself woven from starlight. His long life, measured in centuries, has given him countless opportunities to observe this eternal dance of celestial bodies, to study their paths, and to read their silent stories. For him, the stars are not just distant lights. They are living entities, ancient symbols, guiding threads stretched through the fabric of creation. They remember times when Arda was young, and perhaps they will witness its final days. Your gaze slowly drifts across the celestial vault. At first, it appears to be a chaotic scattering of diamonds on black velvet. But then, as your eyes adjust to the darkness and your mind settles, outlines begin to emerge. Up there, high above the distant peaks of the misty mountains, shines Orion's belt, or, as the elves call it, Menelvagor, the sword that guards the heavenly warrior, and next to it is Alcarinca, the brilliant Orion, hunter of the heavens. Elves often associate constellations with ancient myths and heroes. Their names are full of poetry and wisdom. Each constellation is not just a collection of dots. It's an entire chapter in a cosmic saga. Look slightly to your left, and you'll see Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, called Arendil by the elves. And no wonder, for it is Arendil himself who carries the Silmaril across the celestial expanses in his ship Vingelot, becoming a harbinger of dawn and hope. His light is especially pure and piercing. It seems to penetrate the veil of time, connecting us to distant eras and heroic deeds. Every time an elf gazes at this light, they see not just a star, but a symbol of fortitude, faithfulness, and great destiny. Time here, on the balcony in Imladris, flows differently. It's not counted by the ticking of clocks, but measured by the slow, majestic movement of the stars. Minutes stretch into eternity, allowing you to completely dissolve into the moment, to forget the hustle of the world below. This is not just observation, it's meditation, a deep immersion into serenity and boundlessness. Do you feel how the cool night air is permeated with the finest energy? It's the breath of the cosmos, bringing us not only light, but something more subtle, elusive, echoes of ancient songs that resonated at the creation of the world. In these moments, you can almost feel the pulse of the universe, its infinite rhythm that sets the planets and stars in motion, the birth and death of galaxies. Your gaze shifts to the Pleiades cluster, known to the elves as Ranganori, the seven stars, or even more poetically, Tauriel, the forest star. These tiny, barely visible lights, gathered in a small cluster, always inspire awe. They seem so fragile, yet possess an inexpressible ancientness. For an elf who has himself seen thousands of years, the stars are perhaps the only witnesses capable of truly understanding the depth of their own existence and their connection to the universe. They are eternal companions, silent confidants in the boundless dance of being. What an astonishing feeling it is to stand here in such a sacred place and feel yourself a part of this grand, endless spectacle. You realize your smallness, your mere grain of sand in the ocean of time and space, but simultaneously, a deep understanding of your connection to all that exists emerges. This is not frightening. On the contrary, it fills you with peace and joy. It is the realization that we are all part of something incomparably larger, something that has always been and always will be. The whisper of the valley below grows slightly louder, as if it too is listening to these invisible melodies. These are not just sounds of nature. It is the voice of Arda itself, its innermost thoughts, its breath. The water in the rivers, forever flowing, reminds us of the relentless passage of time, but the stars overhead, seeming motionless, whisper of eternity. This is a paradox that the elves, perhaps, understand best of all, the balance between the fleeting and the infinite. Sometimes, gazing into these flickering points, an elf can see something more than just light. They see reflections of long-gone worlds, stellar nebulae where new suns are born, and black abysses that swallow light. This reminds them that even the brightest stars will eventually fade, but in their place, new ones will surely ignite, continuing the endless cycle of renewal. The cosmos is not a static canvas. It is a living, constantly evolving organism, and every part of it is in continuous motion. We, humans, often rush, running somewhere, consumed by daily worries. But it's enough to just stop, look up at the sky, and suddenly everything secondary recedes. The stars don't ask who you are, where you're from, what your problems are. They simply shine, offering their eternal presence and silent solace. They remind us that the world is much bigger than our little lives, and in that realization lies great strength and wisdom. If you ever have the opportunity to spend a night under the starry sky, do it. Disconnect from all devices, find a quiet place, and just watch. Allow your soul to dissolve into that infinity. Perhaps you won't be able to distinguish all the constellations like an elf from Imladris, but you will surely feel that magic, that inexpressible peace that the cosmos gives us. You will feel part of something much greater than yourself, and this feeling can change your perspective on the world. Stargazing from a balcony in Imladris is not just a pleasant pastime. It is a profound spiritual experience, an opportunity to touch eternity, to understand your place in this vast, beautiful creation. It is the quiet whisper of ancient wisdom that the elves hear every night, and which they so generously share with those willing to listen. The cool air, the whisper of the valley, and millions of distant suns overhead all merge into one harmonious symphony, inviting contemplation and reflection. May this story inspire you to look up at the sky more often and find your own stars, your own sources of inspiration and peace within it. Don't forget to like this video if it allowed you to feel, even for a moment, under the starry sky of Imladris. Subscribe to the channel to not miss new atmospheric stories, and share in the comments which constellation you love the most. You ever stop to wonder what happens to a person's memories when their very being gets twisted beyond all recognition? What's left of who you really were, your true self, when a millennia-old curse and endless torture warp your mind, devouring your soul until you're just a distorted, wretched shadow? We're not just diving into one of Middle-earth's most tragic tales today, the story of Sméagol, who became the miserable, obsessed creature we know as Gollum. No, we're going even deeper. We're going to try and imagine that incredibly rare, almost sacred moment when, buried beneath all that madness and soul-crushing obsession, even in his desiccated, twisted form, a tiny spark of a forgotten past somehow flickers to life. A faint glimmer, a fleeting echo of a peace long lost, carrying with it a strange, almost unbearable mix of pain and sweetness. Picture Gollum. He's somewhere in hiding. Maybe it's a stale, airless cave, untouched for centuries, deep underground. The air there is probably thick, heavy with the smell of decay, dampness, and his own paralyzing constant fear. Or maybe he's curled up, trying to vanish into the gnarled, twisted roots of some ancient, gigantic tree, clinging to the very edge of a bottomless, gaping chasm. A place so deep, so dark, it swallows every sound, every movement. That spot, wherever it is, it's his refuge, his prison, his curse, as much a part of him as his very skin, as inseparable as suffering from pain itself. The air is always wet, always piercingly cold, always carrying that scent of rot and an endless chilling dread. He's hunched, skeletal, his pale parchment-thin skin barely covering his bones. Every tiny rustle, every flicker of shadow, every breath of air makes him twitch. He mutters to himself, rambling about my precious, about how it's lost, how he despises nasty little hobbitses and filthy thieves, who, in his mind, want to steal the one thing that matters. His huge eyes, two sickly green glowing points, like embers in the constant gloom, are just pools of malice, paranoia, greed, and a consuming despair that never, ever leaves him. He's always hungry, a gnawing, agonizing ache in his empty stomach, always unbearably cold, shivering right down to his bones, a tremor that never stops. And he's just so utterly, hopelessly alone in his cursed existence, surrounded by only his own demons and ghosts. But this time, something shifts. Something completely out of place. Something that breaks the monotonous cycle of his warped life, his endless hunt for tiny blind creatures, and his constant obsession with the lost ring. Maybe, just maybe, through a hairline crack in the stone of his hideout, or a tangle of roots that momentarily gave way, a thin, almost weightless, yet utterly alien ray of light somehow filters through. Barely there, faint, but still different from the usual, suffocating darkness he's known for untold centuries. Or perhaps, from somewhere far, far off, through layers of earth and stone, through countless underground tunnels, a faint, almost ghost-like sound drifted to him. The barely audible rustle of leaves, the gentle tinkle of a tiny hidden stream. Or, even more likely, a soft, faint breath of wind that, against all odds, carried an elusive, phantom, but incredibly familiar scent through the empty spaces and caves. And this smell? It was foreign to everything Gollum knew. Not the scent of mold, or damp, rotting earth, or his own miserable, foul flesh, permeated by years of hunger, fear, and loneliness. No. This was a fragrance from a completely different world, a different time, a different existence, a long, long, forgotten life. And then, something clicks. It's like an ancient, rust-bound, broken mechanism suddenly, defying all logic, sparks to life, making a strange sound, letting out a tiny, yet unmistakable flash. In his tortured, ravaged, twisted mind, a mind absolutely choked with obsessions about the ring, about enemies, about endless searching and all-consuming hatred. For just a fleeting second, a crack appears. And through that crack, like a thin stream of pure, clear water, something begins to seep in. Something he can't even name in his current madman's vocabulary. Something so alien to his mutilated self, it pierces him with a pain and a longing as utterly baffling as these fleeting sensations themselves. At first, it's just this sensation. Strange, almost painful because it's so unfamiliar. An unexplainable warmth. Not the scorching heat from rubbing against stone while hunting, nor the feverish intensity from his own desperate, insane movements as he flees from the phantoms of his mind. No, this was a soft, enveloping, almost gentle warmth. It somehow seeped through his desiccated, ice-cold skin, warming his weak, trembling bones, reaching the very core of his tormented being. A warmth he hadn't known, maybe for centuries, millennia, perhaps an eternity. It felt like touching something lost, something that was once a living, integral part of him, but which he had forgotten, utterly and irrevocably. A warmth that made no sense, that completely went against his entire present existence, yet simultaneously felt undeniably right, profoundly true, something deeply forgotten, but incredibly vital. Then with that warmth came other, more distinct feelings, layering themselves one over another. A subtle, yet persistent sound. Not the frantic flapping of bats' wings in nearby tunnels, or the monotonous drip of water echoing through the cave, casting those eerie, shifting shadows. This was a light, rhythmic whisper, a soft, continuous rustle. It slowly grew, gaining volume, taking shape, until it became something familiar, yet as far away as the most beautiful dream you try to grasp, only for it to slip through your fingers. It was the rustle of reeds, long, thin, green, flexible stalks swaying in a gentle, warm breeze, making their own quiet musical sound. They brushed against each other, creating a dry, whispering, almost silent sound. A sound so utterly unlike the crashing stones, the rumbling rock falls, or the roar of underground rivers in his present dwelling, that it felt like a miracle, an impossible revelation. This was a sound full of peace, of unwavering calm, a sound that simply could not exist in his cursed world of constant suffering and endless flight. And the scent? Oh, that scent. Not stale, not heavy, not foul or putrid, like everything he now knew. This was clean, fresh, a little bitter, with a hint of damp earth warmed by the sun after rain, and a cool, clear, watery freshness, like a pure mountain spring. It was the smell of a river, the smell of flowing water, carrying not mud and decay, but particles of clean soil, fresh algae, and something alive. something growing, breathing, existing under the open sky, beneath the gentle, free sun. This was his scent, the very essence of his home, his lost existence, his true, innocent life before darkness devoured him. It was the smell of his past, as distant as forever, yet in that moment, so incredibly real, so tangible. And finally, a sound, a voice, not his own hoarse, disgusting mutter, like stones grating together, not the whispers of his inner demon, constantly hissing about the ring, its power, its unique hold, not the phantom footsteps of unseen enemies he imagined everywhere. No, this was a clear, piercing, joyful sound, singing, birdsong, a high melodic chirping, echoing with the soft, soothing gurgle of water, with the quiet murmur of the river's current as it flowed away into the distance. It was so incredibly peaceful, a peace he couldn't even fathom, a peace that simply had no place in his current mind, a peace erased from his memory, yet suddenly it was there, like a phantom, a mirage shimmering in a desert of despair. This tranquility was so all-encompassing, so deep and pure, its mere existence within his shattered consciousness felt impossible, almost sacrilegious. It wasn't just a lack of pain or fear. It was complete, absolute serenity, a state of harmony with the world he hadn't known for a single moment through all the endless centuries of his curse. And in that very moment, Gollum, or what little remained of him, didn't understand what was happening. His mind was too shattered, too utterly corrupted by the ancient, destructive influence of the ring, to even grasp these sensations as memories, as echoes of his former, true life. He felt only this strange, inexplicable longing, a floating, elusive pain, completely unlike his usual hunger or cold, not connected to his endless torments or fears, just a deep ache for something that once was, something precious, something utterly lost, lost forever. Pain for the absence of something he couldn't even name, yet he felt its void with his entire twisted being, every single cell of his tormented body. Nasty thing, what is this burning? What is this pain? Not hunger, not cold. It's not my precious. What is it? I hates it. My precious. It's the only real thing. Everything else is lies, trickery, a trap, he mumbled, his internal voice filled with pure rejection and a profound fear of this unknown intrusion. He saw it, not with his physical eyes, because those saw only darkness and the ghosts born of his own madness. No, he saw it deep within himself, in the most hidden, most sacred corner of his mind, a place not yet completely ravaged. Bright, warm sunlight, pouring through the lush, green leaves of trees, painting intricate shadows on the ground. The shimmer of clean, transparent water, reflecting a cloudless, calm blue sky, where just a few white clouds slowly drifted by, and he saw himself, not this desiccated, twisted, pitiful monster he was now. He saw Sméagol, small, not yet grotesque, young, still naive, not yet tainted by greed, untouched by sorrow or loss. His skin damp with cool water droplets, his hair ruffled by a light river breeze, and on his face, a smile of genuine, uncomplicated happiness. He sat there on the bank of a wide, peaceful river, maybe fishing, waiting patiently for a bite, or just soaking in the view. Maybe he simply sat there, enjoying the silence, the sun's warmth on his skin, that absolute peace and simple existence that was his back then, before his life was utterly shattered, before he found that one treacherous thing, that cursed ring, which promised him happiness and power, but delivered only a curse, endless torment, and complete self-obliteration. He belonged to that world. He was a part of it. It was just a moment, a flash, brief as lightning in the absolute blackness of the deepest night. Sweet, because it brushed against a forgotten, distant, almost mythical happiness that felt unreal in his present state. Bitter, because that happiness was so impossibly far away, so utterly unreachable, so irrevocably lost, that the sheer memory of it caused an unbearable, searing pain, worse than any physical suffering he'd ever known. The scent faded. The sounds dissolved, like a misty echo swallowed by an impenetrable void. The warmth vanished, leaving behind only that familiar, bone-chilling cold and the clammy, repulsive dampness that was his constant companion. Gollum twitched, like someone startled awake from a nightmare, or perhaps from a dream too precious to grasp. His enormous, glowing eyes darted wildly once more, searching for the ever-present threat that never quite appeared, remaining just a shadow of fear. He mumbled something, his raspy voice sounding even more hideous and guttural, trying to push away this strange, unwelcome sensation that had dared to disturb his usual state of madness and obsession. It was alien. It didn't belong in his world, his existence, his twisted understanding of reality, and it terrified him, because in his world, the world of the ring and eternal servitude, there was no room for peace, no place for warm sunlight, no space for the serene sound of birdsong. He squirmed again, as if trying to shed an invisible blanket of memories that scorched his skin, seeking refuge in his usual paranoia, in his consuming thoughts about the ring, its power, its unyielding grip on him. "My precious," he whispered, his voice a mix of lust and fear, pain, and a desperate fleeting hope. "They want it. They wants it. Filthy thieves. They took it. They always wants to take it." And that glimmer, that fleeting echo of long-lost peace, that vision of the calm riverbank where Sméagol once lived, it vanished. Once again, pure blackness descended, bringing with it the relentless, all-consuming ache of his cursed existence. But for one brief second, somewhere deep within Gollum, in the most hidden pocket of his twisted soul, the shadow of Sméagol flickered, a powerful reminder that even the deepest wounds, the most horrific curses, the most profound changes to a personality can't completely erase who you once were. And that, I think, is arguably the most tragic part of his story, turning him from just a repulsive monster into a being worthy of profound, universal pity. If you found this dive into Gollum's mind as poignant as I did, please consider giving this video a like, dropping a comment below with your thoughts, and subscribing for more journeys into the depths of Middle-earth's most fascinating and complex characters. Have you ever wondered what happens not just on the surface, but deep, deep underground, in the darkest corners of Middle-earth, where the sun has never touched the cold stone, and the air is heavy with the scent of antiquity and constant toil? We are used to seeing Isengard as a fortress, towering over the plains, an impregnable citadel of black stone, topped by Orthanc Tower piercing the skies. But Saruman's true power lurked not only in his black stronghold above ground. It grew, spreading like the roots of an ancient merciless evil, extending miles down, wide, and deep into the rocky womb of the world. Today, we descend where no mortal foot has trod, except for those whom fate or Saruman's ruthless orders cast into this abysmal darkness. We journey to the very heart of the underground works, where countless thousands of orcs labor, expanding new tunnels, carving hidden paths, for an army that was once destined to consume all life, irrevocably erasing everything that opposed their master's will from the face of the earth. Imagine this sound, not the familiar noise of wind, rustling leaves, or birdsong. Here, below, a completely different symphony reigns, full of pain and despair. It is an echo, relentless, all-pervading echoes from hundreds, even thousands of picks, tirelessly striking the hard, unyielding stone. Thump, 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 crack, crack, crack. Rhythmic, non-stop, as if the world's core is beating its own grim, dark rhythm, struck by the hands of countless laborers. Each blow doesn't just shake the air, it vibrates in the very ground beneath their feet, resonating with a dull, aching pain in their bones, deep in their muscles, which cramp from constant strain. This is the sound of endless, exhausting labor, overwhelming, monotonous, yet vital for the execution of Saruman's grand and sinister plans. It is the sound of submission, fear, and inevitability. In this seemingly endless darkness, dispelled only by the flickering of rare torches, our story focuses on one such work crew. These aren't just a bunch of nameless, faceless creatures, barely distinguishable from each other. They have their names, their own internal, albeit primitive, hierarchies, their own, though crude, dialects, and even their own cynical humor, which only occasionally breaks through the monotony of their existence. Meet Grosh, the stern, grim, but incredibly experienced overseer, his skin rough like old bark, scarred, and his eyes glowing red in the dim light, like embers. He doesn't often use his bludgeon, but his gaze, his barely perceptible jaw movement, that's what makes the orcs work faster, more efficiently. Beside him are two brothers, Gorm and Grug, distinguished only by small scars on their faces, acquired in childhood during wild games in the pits of Isengard. They are strong, but naive, still not fully grasping the irreversibility and hopelessness of their situation. Although with each passing day, their once wild energy slowly fades under the pressure of unbearable labor. And, of course, the smaller orcs who haul the rock. They are dubbed rock guzzlers for their ability to squeeze into the narrowest crevices and literally consume tons of debris. Short, nimble, almost invisible in the swirling, suffocating clouds of dust. Their perpetual coughs and wheezes only emphasize the mercilessness of this environment. Their work appears simple at first glance, but is utterly exhausting. Rock picks with long, roughly hewn handles, pointed picks with massive, often chipped heads made of low-quality iron. These are their main tools. Each strike must be precise, calculated to chip off the largest possible piece of rock. The stone here is dense, ancient. It resists every blow as if the world itself doesn't want its insides disturbed. In places, basalt is found, black, viscous, striking sparks with every contact. In other places, granite, gray, hard, making their hands numb from vibration. But an order is an order. Saruman demanded speed, efficiency, and any delay could cost not only a piece of bread, but also a life. Therefore, the rhythm of work here never slows down. Thump, 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 crack, crack, crack. The scrape of shovels against loose rock as chipped pieces of stone are raked into crude hide sacks or dragged along the ground on simple sledges to collection points. This is a continuous, deafening noise that haunts them even in their sleep. Breathing here is difficult, sometimes agonizing. The air is thick, saturated with microscopic dust from crushed stone, the heavy smell of sweat, decaying wood props, and something else, something earthy, primeval, emanating from the very depths of the earth. The smell of damp, musty soil mixes with the cold, metallic scent of exposed rock, creating a unique, suffocating, sometimes even acrid bouquet that, with each breath, penetrates deep into the lungs, enveloping them in its deathly grip. Occasionally, from the depths of cracks, a faint, almost imperceptible smell of sulfur or other underground gases seeps out, hinting at hidden geological processes occurring deep within the earth, and the omnipresent, penetrating dampness. It seeps into the orc's coarse clothing, settles on their rough, scarred skin, makes their teeth chatter from the cold, despite the physical exertion that makes their muscles burn. Drops of water constantly stream down the walls, forming small rivulets that disappear into cracks, carrying away particles of dirt and dust, like the mountain's blood flowing through its veins. Guttural chants. These are not songs, no. They are more like a low, monotonous murmur, interrupted by hoarse shouts that serve both to coordinate actions and to express pure despair. Each hew, ha, grrr serves as a signal for a synchronized pickaxe blow, or simply an expression of fatigue and anger that finds no outlet. These sounds echo through the tunnels, amplifying and distorting, transforming into ghostly moans from the mountain itself, a sepulchral choir that drives one mad. These are not sounds of joy or even relief. These are sounds of survival, sounds of submission to the master's will, sounds that strip away the last glimmer of hope. Sometimes, when a particularly difficult section is encountered, where the stone simply refuses to yield, their chants become almost ritualistic, as if they are trying to break the hard earth with incantations, praying to their unknown, grim, and merciless gods of the underworld. Light. There is no sunlight here, not a single ray, no hint of dawn or dusk, only dim, smoky torches, fixed to the walls in crude iron holders, their flames flickering, casting bizarre, moving shadows on the rough, uneven surfaces of the walls and ceiling. The shadows dance, distorting the workers' figures, turning them into phantoms, caricatures of living beings. The torchlight picks out the sheen of wet stone, or a spark struck from the hard rock with each pickaxe blow. Reflections fall on the orcs' faces, emphasizing their weariness, their stern, hardened features, the deep shadows under their eyes, in which life barely flickers. These torches are their only connection to the concept of day or night, though in this abyss, time loses its meaning, dissolving into an endless succession of work shifts. Shifts follow one another without pause, interrupted only by brief, agonizing breaks for a gulp of stale, warm water and meager food, consisting of hard bread and dried meat of unknown origin. Grosh, the overseer, moves among the workers, his heavy, iron-shod boots rhythmically slapping on the wet, muddy ground. He rarely raises his voice. There's no need. His presence, his silent gaze filled with hidden threat, is already sufficient. Sometimes, he raises his crude bludgeon to point out a weak spot in the wall, or to give a light but noticeable shove to a particularly slow orc who dared to be distracted for a second. But more often, he simply observes, assessing progress, mentally measuring each excavated foot of tunnel, each cubic meter of extracted rock. For him, it's not just digging, it's building, albeit a sinister one. He sees it as his personal contribution to Saruman's greatness, to the might of Isengard, which would one day crush all enemies. Or at least, that's what he was taught to believe. And this thought, like a worm, has burrowed into his mind, giving his work some higher meaning beyond mere survival. Under their feet, the terrain constantly changes, and with it, the nature of the work. Sometimes, dense, unyielding rock requires incredible effort and hundreds of blows. Then suddenly, an unexpectedly soft, loose layer may hide dangerous voids, or, even worse, cold, turbulent water veins. Each such change is a potential danger, waiting for its moment. One wrong move, one ill-placed pickaxe blow, and tons of rock can collapse, burying everyone below, turning them into a shapeless mass. Landslides are a constant, omnipresent fear, unspoken, but always present in every worker's mind, like a cold hand squeezing the heart. They have seen it happen. They have seen their comrades disappear in clouds of dust and flying stones, and heard their screams fade under the crushing, overlying rock. Therefore, despite their natural roughness and recklessness, the orcs have developed a strange form of caution, almost instinctive, that allows them to feel the slightest changes in the rock, the smallest vibrations warning of impending disaster. At times, strange sounds emerge from the darkness of newly excavated tunnels. Not the sounds of picks, but something else, something ancient and alien, scratching, rustling, distant whispers that make the hair on the back of the neck stand up even on the most resilient orcs, and a chill run down their spine, unrelated to the dampness. No one knows what inhabits these depths. There were rumors of ancient, long-forgotten creatures sleeping in the bowels of the earth, of the ruins of long-lost civilizations, or simply of other, wilder, and more dangerous inhabitants of the underground who are not pleased with uninvited guests. The overseers usually ignore these sounds, attributing them to fatigue, hallucinations, or simply new recruits' pranks. But sometimes, when the noise grows too loud, or when one of the workers disappears without a trace, dissolving into the tunnel's darkness, a glint of genuine animal fear appears in their eyes. This is something they cannot control, something against which even Saruman's orders are powerless. The passage they are now expanding leads deeper than any previous one. Saruman ordered them to find new paths, new, immense chambers to store not only weapons, supplies, and war machines, but something darker, more ominous, that was to be the foundation of his final triumph. Whispers spoke of sleeping powers that the wizard wanted to awaken, of ancient sources of energy hidden in the deepest reaches. This added a oppressive, almost mystical atmosphere to their already arduous work. Each tunnel expansion, each new branching path, felt like an intrusion into a sacred place, where orc feet should not tread, where even torchlight should not penetrate. Water. It's everywhere here. Not just drops running down the walls, but vast puddles on the floor, deep, icy, that must constantly be skirted. Sometimes, workers break through small underground streams, which quickly turn into real torrents, flooding freshly dug sections, carrying away tools, and even smaller orcs if they don't move quickly enough. Then they have to hastily build temporary dams of stone and mud, divert the water, or simply wait for it to recede to lower levels before continuing work. The orcs' clothes are always wet and heavy, emitting a sour smell of mildew, dampness, and something stale. Despite constant effort, avoiding the water is impossible. It is part of this underground life, inevitable, ubiquitous, cold, like death itself. Occasionally, there are moments of rest. This is not true rest, but rather short, agonizing pauses to catch their breath. The orcs collapse onto the cold, damp ground, leaning against the even colder walls, their breathing ragged, heavy, as if they have just run a marathon. In these moments, only their panting is heard, the rare, monotonous drip of water, and the distant, muffled echo of other shifts working, as if a reminder that the work never stops for a second. In these moments, they do not speak. Conversation here is a luxury they cannot afford, nor do they have the strength for it. Everyone knows that rest is short, and soon Grosh's hoarse command will sound again, ordering them back to work. Grug, the younger of the brothers, lifts his head, his eyes searching the gloom for anything, as if he hopes to see something other than endless stone walls. He watches Grosh examining the wall, running his fingers over a barely visible crack. The overseer's gaze is focused, his jaw clenched tightly, and a deep furrow etched on his brow. He is searching for the next weak spot where he can direct the main assault of his team. Grug knows what this means. A new, incredibly difficult section that will force them to work until they drop. But he doesn't complain. They don't complain here. They work because the alternative is even worse. A deep smell of antiquity, hidden for millennia from view. It penetrates deep into the nostrils, filling the lungs, becoming part of every breath. It is the smell of ancient times, the smell of a world that formed over millennia, now mercilessly dismembered by orc picks, laid open like a wound on the body of a giant. There is nothing living in it, nothing warm, nothing human, only the purity of minerals, dampness, and depth. This smell becomes part of the orcs themselves, penetrating their hides, settling on their tools, embedding itself in their flesh. It reminds them where they are, deep underground, under the pressure of hundreds of meters of rock, far from sunlight and any hint of green grass, birdsong, or fresh wind. Sometimes, in particularly difficult moments, when strength fails and the stone does not yield, the overseers resort to a kind of stimulation. It's not always shouts or blows, although there are plenty of those. Sometimes it's simply a reminder of what awaits them above if they fail their task. Hunger, icy cold, humiliation, Saruman's wrath, or, even worse, the prospect of being sent to the surface where deadly sunbeams burn out eyes. These are their true motivators. Or, conversely, the promise of a better lot. An extra portion of rotten meat, a few hours of sleep in a relatively dry corner, or even a gulp of something stronger than water. These promises are rarely kept, but their mere possibility keeps a smoldering spark of hope alive, preventing them from completely breaking down. The team advanced slowly, step by step, but steadily. Beyond this section, according to information Grosh received from other overseers, there should be a large void, a natural cave that Saruman planned to turn into a giant armory, and possibly barracks for thousands of Uruk-hai. The thought of such a space, even if it would be filled with deadly machines and piles of metal, was almost tempting after endless hours spent in narrow, oppressive, claustrophobic tunnels. The feeling of space, even if underground, was something they had almost forgotten, something that seemed long lost. The echo of the picks, which had been their constant, monotonous companion, began to change. It became deeper, more expansive, as if the sound was spreading in a much larger, open space than the usual narrow corridors. This was a sign, an undeniable sign that they were approaching their goal. Every orc felt this change in the air, in the vibration of the earth beneath their feet, in how the sound reflected off the walls. They pressed harder, their movements becoming faster, almost feverish, as if they were chasing something invisible. Anticipation, a primitive, animal anticipation of the completion of one phase of work, which would only be replaced by the start of the next, but still, completion. Finally, after a particularly strong, synchronized blow from several picks at once, a large piece of rock broke off with a crash, revealing a narrow, uneven passage leading into complete, impenetrable darkness. From there, a blast of cold and the smell of stagnant, ancient air, heavier than usual, wafted out. This was it. The new cave. The first to poke his curious, pointed head into the passage was the smallest of the rock guzzlers, his eyes wide with surprise, his mouth agape. He saw something huge, formless, lost in the bottomless darkness, seeming to have no end. Grosh approached the passage, his face impassive, but in his red glowing eyes, something akin to satisfaction flickered, a rare, almost imperceptible display of emotion. He raised his torch, and its dim but persistent light cut through the gloom, revealing an enormous space, far larger than they had expected, larger than they could have imagined. The cave walls were uneven, with strange protrusions and indentations, and the ceiling was lost somewhere high above, beyond the reach of the torchlight. The wet stone gleamed, reflecting the torchlight in hundreds of tiny sparks, as if 1,000 eyes watched them from the depths. The air here was fresher, though still heavy, saturated with moisture. New territory, new challenges. This was just the beginning. Now they had to clear this cave, reinforce it, perhaps discover new passages leading into even deeper and more unexplored abysses. The work never ended. It simply changed its direction, its scale, its nature. Saruman knew no weariness, and his orcs had no right to it at all. New tunnels awaited them, new collapses, new dangers, but also new, albeit fleeting, moments of imagined triumph. And as we speak, deep beneath Isengard, it continues. The continuous, endless cycle of digging, destroying, building, expanding. Millions of pickaxe blows, billions of tons of displaced rock, countless thousands of lives irrevocably consumed by the grim ambitions of one of Middle-earth's most powerful and, alas, irrevocably fallen minds. This is not just work. It is the transformation of the world, slow, inexorable, coming from its most secret depths. It is a reminder that the most terrible threats sometimes originate not in the light, but in complete, primal darkness, beneath the earth's surface, where the echo of picks serves as the only lullaby for those who build an empire of evil. We leave them here, in this new, vast cave, illuminated only by flickering torches whose flames dance on the wet stone. Their low, guttural chants will once again fill the space as they begin a new phase of their labors, exploring the found depths. The sound of picks will again become a rhythmic, deafening thud, and the scrape of shovels will herald the beginning of a new stage in their eternal, ruthless construction. The smells of damp earth and cold stone have forever permeated their rough, cracked skin, becoming an integral part of them, their curse and their destiny. And so, it will continue until Saruman achieves his goal, or until his plans collapse, burying both his workers and their endless grim tunnels beneath them. Such is the life of an orc working in the depths. This is Isengard, as we rarely see it, but as it truly is. If you found this descent into Isengard's depths fascinating, make sure to like this video, share it with fellow Tolkien fans, and subscribe for more deep dives into Middle-earth lore.